Look who walked into the room and made every ego go silent. Look who executed a strike so precise, so surgical, so clean that the entire crew orbiting around your opponent went still, like someone hit a cosmic mute button. Hello, you quiet disruptor, you calm detonator, you subtle force that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't swing its fists, doesn't need theatrics. Because the precision of your mind does the damage for you. You didn't embarrass them, you didn't humiliate them, you didn't even target them, You just punctured their ego with one exact move. And now, every single person watching is suddenly questioning the hierarchy they used to swear by. They can't breathe the same way. They can't speak the same way. They can't even make eye contact with the person they once treated like an invincible authority. Because you didn't just win. You executed a mental checkmate they never saw coming. You flipped a board they didn't even know you were playing on. And the way it unfolded, quiet, understated, effortless, makes it even more terrifying for them. They're still sitting there replaying the moment over and over. Dissecting your tone, rewinding your words, trying to understand how someone they underestimated this deeply managed to slip through every psychological defense they built around themselves. They thought they were dealing with someone predictable. They thought they were dealing with someone manageable. They thought they had you categorized, labeled, placed neatly in a mental drawer they could reach for whenever they needed to feel superior. And then you struck. Not wildly, not emotionally, not impulsively. You struck with the kind of accuracy only someone who studies people quietly, patiently, almost clinically can achieve. Let's talk about that moment. The moment everything shifted. Not the part where you spoke or acted, the part right before that. The stillness, the air thickening, the subtle shift in energy only the sensitive ones noticed. Because that was the true beginning of their downfall. You weren't reacting, you were calculating. You were watching how their ego inflated every time they thought they got one over you. How their confidence swelled every time they assumed you didn't notice the mockery hidden beneath their tone. How their friends, their entire crew, cheered quietly behind them like a pack, depending on the alpha to bark on their behalf. They mistook your silence for surrender. They mistook your calm for weakness. They mistook your restraint for fear. They didn't realize you were mapping the psychological battlefield with more accuracy than they've ever mapped their own insecurities. What they didn't understand is that people like you don't move from emotion. You move from strategy. You see the board as a whole while they only see the square they're sitting on. You let them brag. You let them gloat. You let them beam barrage. You let them perform because you already knew the move that would collapse everything they built. And when the moment came, you didn't hesitate. You didn't stutter. You didn't question. You just executed. One statement, one maneuver, one perfectly aligned stroke of psychological clarity. And their ego imploded like a balloon meeting a needle. That's why their whole crew is quiet right now. It's not fear of you. It's fear of what you revealed. Because when you punctured that ego, you didn't just expose the leader. You exposed the entire ecosystem that depended on that leader's illusion of strength. You showed them how fragile the hierarchy was. How childish the theatrics were, how all of it, all the bravado, the posturing, the subtle jabs, were nothing more than a shaky tower built on a single insecurity they were hoping no one would ever point at. And you didn't point at it, you pierced it. Now they're spiraling, trying to figure out what the hell happened. Their group chat is quiet in the loudest possible way. Their faces are stiff, their pride bruised, their internal narratives scrambling for a way to understand the sudden shift in power. They're asking themselves questions that taste like humiliation. How did we miss that? How did they become this sharp? What else have they been noticing? Have they been reading all of us this whole time? And the truth, the one they're desperately trying not to choke on, is that you were always capable of this. You always had this level of psychological clarity. You always had this ability to dissect a situation from the inside without ever showing your hand. The problem wasn't you. The problem was the version of you they built in their minds. The version that made them comfortable. The version that kept their ego inflated. They projected simplicity onto someone complex. They projected weakness onto someone who was simply observing. They projected ability onto someone who was quietly reconstructing reality one inference at a time. This is why their crew is silent now, because silence is the only language left when certainty collapses. They aren't just quiet because the leader got mentally checkmated. They're quiet because they realized how easily it could have been any of them. They're quiet because the hierarchy they relied on was exposed as a house of cards. They're quiet because they witnessed something rare, precision that doesn't announce itself. You delivered a strike without theatrics, without raising your voice, without breaking character. You delivered a strike that didn't attack a person. It attacked the narrative that held their entire social structure together. Let me tell you what actually happened beneath the surface, because they will get this part wrong every time. They will think you got bold. They will think you snapped. They will think you finally fought back. But the truth is colder, cleaner, more dangerous. You didn't lash out. You didn't retaliate. You didn't try to win. You simply chose truth over theater. And the truth, when spoken by someone who sees through illusions, is lethal. This is where their panic is coming from. Not from the moment itself, but from what it reveals. That you can strike with precision at any time and they would never see it coming. That you can read motives they didn't know they were expressing. That you can analyze patterns they thought were too subtle to detect. That you can anticipate moves before they even think about making them. This is what terrifies them. The realization that the quiet one was the real strategist all along. You didn't embarrass them publicly. You made them question themselves privately, which is far worse. Now, let's talk about the deeper dynamic. Their leader's ego wasn't just a personality trait. It was the glue holding the group's confidence together. They relied on that ego to set the tone. They depended on that ego to do the talking for them. They used that ego as a shield to mask their own insecurities. But when you punctured it cleanly, precisely, everything behind it was revealed. And what stood behind it wasn't strength. It wasn't dominance. It wasn't superiority. It was fear, fragility, inflated confidence, supported by shaky assumptions. Their crew isn't quiet because they respect you. They're quiet because they respect you. They gratumise themselves in the collapse. They're seeing that if one ego can be taken down with one move, then none of them are safe. They're seeing that the loudest person in the room was also the easiest one to dismantle. They're seeing that their entire social dynamic was a pyramid built on insecurity, dressed as authority. You didn't just knock the leader off the top. You exposed the foundation that doesn't exist. And here's the real brilliance. You didn't do it by trying to dominate. You did it by refusing to play the role they assigned you. People like them depend on predictability. They depend on you reacting the way they expect. They depend on you staying in the position they mentally placed you in. But you shifted calmly, cleanly, without warning. And that shift wasn't toward aggression, it was toward clarity. Clarity is the one thing an inflated ego cannot survive. This is why they're still frozen, replaying the scene in their heads. They can't categorize what just happened. They can't label you easily anymore. They can't reduce you to a predictable response pattern. You become an unknown variable, and in any group dynamic, the unknown variable is the most dangerous presence in the room. They don't know what you're capable of. They don't know how much you see. They don't know how long you've been analyzing them. And the possibility that you've always been 3 steps ahead is eating them alive. Let's dig deeper into the psychology of the ego you punctured. Ego thrives on illusion. It needs an audience. It needs believers. It needs people to feed it with reactions, fear, validation, submission. When you refused to feed it, when you responded with precision instead of emotion, you starved it. You didn't fight it. You dismantled it. A fragile ego cannot survive precision. It cannot handle accuracy. It cannot endure exposure. It needs chaos to hide in. And you didn't give it chaos. You gave it clarity, which is the sharpest blade a mind like yours can wield. And now the aftermath is unfolding exactly as expected. They're pretending nothing happened while thinking about nothing else. They're creating explanations in their heads that make them feel less defeated. They're rewriting the moment in their memory to protect their pride. They're telling themselves, "You got lucky." As if luck can replicate the kind of precision you delivered. But beneath all their internal stories is the truth they will never say out loud. You saw them clearly and they couldn't handle the reflection. Now watch what happens next. New behavior patterns will start emerging in their crew. Micro shifts, nervous shifts, hesitation in their voice when they speak around you, longer pauses, quieter reactions, avoidance of direct confrontation, subtle respect they'll never admit aloud. Because once someone sees how easily a facade collapses, they can never fully trust it again. Your move didn't end a conflict. It restructured the power dynamic permanently. They feel it. You feel it. Everyone watching feels it. And the unsettling part for them is that the shift wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some explosive spectacle they could analyze or dissect. It was clean, quiet, surgical. A single psychological incision that changed the entire landscape without leaving visible wounds. That's what disturbs them, the absence of chaos, because chaos is something they understand. Precision is something they fear. You didn't just puncture an ego. You altered the gravitational pull of the entire group. Before their leader was the sun they orbited around. Now the orbit is glitching. Their internal map is malfunctioning. That leader they once viewed as untouchable suddenly looks human, breakable, fallible. And what do people do when they realize their sun can burn out? They look for a new center of gravity. They start scanning the room for the one who demonstrated real force, quiet force, controlled force, the type of force that doesn't need a stage to announce itself. So while they're trying to pretend nothing has changed, their instincts are betraying them. Their instincts are turning toward you. Watch closely. Their eyes will give it away before their words ever do. Someone who used to look at you with superiority will now avert their gaze. Someone who used to smirk at you will now shift their jaw like something is stuck there. Someone who used to interrupt you mid-sentence will suddenly wait for you to finish. They don't know why they're doing it. They just feel the new tension in the air. The tension of hierarchy rearranging itself in real time. They feel the difference between loud ego and quiet competence. They feel the weight of a mind that can dismantle illusions without raising its voice. You didn't just defeat someone. You revealed reality, and reality is the one opponent no ego can survive. Their leader is the one crumbling the fastest, even though they'll try to hide it. That ego you punctured isn't like a balloon that pops once and disappears. It's more like a cracked mirror. Every glance they take into themselves now reflects a version they don't want to admit. They feel exposed, but not publicly, exposed internally. And that internal exposure is far more destructive because now their entire performance is fueled by panic. The crew may not fully understand it yet, but subconsciously they're already picking up on the leader's instability. They're sensing the microfractures. They're sensing the loss of control. They're sensing that the person they followed wasn't unshakable. They were untested. When someone who has never been challenged finally gets challenged, they don't know how to respond. They aren't used to recalibrating. They aren't used to recalibrating. They aren't used to reflection. They aren't used to humility. Their entire identity depends on external reinforcement. And when that reinforcement collapses, their internal world starts disintegrating. That is what's happening to them right now. Their collapse isn't loud, but it's inevitable. And their crew, whether consciously or not, is bracing for impact. Now here's the part that makes the checkmate even more devastating. Your move wasn't emotional. That's why it hit so deeply. An emotional strike invites retaliation, but a precise strike, a calculated strike, a clean strike delivered from a place of absolute clarity that terrifies people because they know they can't predict someone who thinks instead of reacts. They can anticipate an angry person. They can't anticipate an observant one. They can measure volume. They can't measure silence. They can prepare for chaos. They cannot defend against strategy. Your silence before the checkmate, your calm during it, and your stillness afterward. That's what rewired the room. You demonstrated control over yourself. And that means you have control over the situation. That's something their leader never had. Their dominance was performative. Yours is structural. The crew is starting to feel the difference, even if they don't fully understand it yet. They're realizing they've been operating under a false assumption of power this whole time. And now that the illusion is gone, the psychological gravity is shifting toward you, whether you want it or not. There's a specific type of quiet that enters a room when someone's ego has been dissected with precision. It's not the quiet of fear, it's the quiet of recalibration. People are trying to rebuild their understanding of the hierarchy, but the blueprint they relied on has been destroyed. They don't know where to place themselves. They don't know where to place their leader. They don't know where to place you. And that uncertainty is the most powerful advantage you now possess. Uncertainty creates openings. Uncertainty creates space. Uncertainty forces people to observe instead of assume. And when people start observing you without their old biases, they begin to see your true range. The shift is subtle but inevitable. They start treating your presence differently. They start adjusting their tone around you, start moderating their reactions. They start giving you an invisible buffer of respect that wasn't there before. They don't fully understand why they're doing it. Instinct is making the decision before logic can catch up. Something inside them is saying, be careful with this one. They're not like us. They're not breakable like we assumed. And once that instinct kicks in, it never fully disappears. Your precision did something else, something even more profound. It exposed who in the crew was strong enough to handle the truth and who was only loyal to the illusion. Because the moment the illusion cracked, their reactions split into categories. Some became silent out of shock. Some became silent out of shock. Some became silent out of respect. Some became silent because they don't yet know which side of history they want to stand on. And some, only a rare few, became silent because they recognized what you did. Those are the ones who truly saw the move. Those are the ones whose eyes shifted not with panic, but with understanding. They know exactly what you did. They know exactly how you did it, and they know exactly why it worked, and deep down they admire it. The crew that once stood together is now split internally in ways they won't acknowledge out loud. A quiet fracture is forming, not caused by drama, not caused by conflict, but caused by the sudden realization that the authority they relied on is no longer the strongest mind in the room. When a group is built around dominance, it collapses the moment someone demonstrates higher clarity. That's what you triggered. That's why they're quiet. That's why they're restless. That's why the energy feels different now. The checkmate wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a reconstruction. Everyone is now forced to rebuild their understanding of you. Not based on old assumptions, but on undeniable evidence. They saw the way you handled the situation. They saw the way you dismantled the leader's ego with a single precise move. They saw the way the entire dynamic shifted without you raising your voice. That is the kind of moment that rewrites reputations instantly. And the rewrite isn't temporary. It's permanent. Their leader will try to recover, but their recovery will be desperate, not confident. They will overcompensate. They will try to regain authority by speaking louder, acting tougher, making grand gestures, but none of it will land the same. Once people see that the emperor has cracks in the armor never looks whole again. And the more the leader tries to restore their image, the more obvious it becomes that the image was always fragile. You didn't break them, you exposed what was already broken. That's the kind of damage that can't be repaired. And here's the part that sets the stage for everything still to come. Your move didn't just shift the hierarchy, it shifted the narrative. People aren't thinking about what the leader used to be. They're thinking about what you just showed them. They're thinking about how someone they dismissed executed a mental strike so precise that it silenced an entire social structure. They're thinking about what else you're capable of. They're thinking about how long you've been seeing through them. They're thinking about how many of their insecurities you already understand. They're thinking about how dangerous a quiet mind can be when it finally decides to act. And this is where the real psychological storm begins. Not in the moment of impact, but in the aftermath where their imaginations spiral out of control. Because once someone sees you puncture an ego with that level of precision, Their mind starts building entire scenarios of what else you might be capable of dismantling. They begin imagining possibilities. And imagination is far more terrifying than reality. It fills in blanks with things you haven't even done yet. It creates threats that don't exist but feel real, because the evidence of your capability is undeniable. That's the kind of fear that doesn't fade, it amplifies. The leader's crew is now trapped in a new kind of awareness. The awareness that every interaction they ever had with you might have been observed, processed, stored, and understood at a depth they can't comprehend. Every joke, every slight, every side glance, every attempt to show superiority. They're replaying all of it. They're wondering which moment gave them away, which moment revealed a weakness, which moment exposed something they thought they were hiding. They're not just intimidated by what you did, they're intimidated by the possibility that you saw everything before they saw anything. That's the part that destroys their ability to stand upright around you. You didn't attack their leader. You attacked their illusion of safety, and an unsafe mind is an unstable ally. Notice how they now speak less freely among themselves. They're worried about being next, even though you never made them a target. That's the irony. They fear something you never threatened, because the precision you applied wasn't random. It was intentional. It was aimed. It was efficient. It wasn't the chaos of a mind losing control. It was the clarity of a mind that has mastered control. They know this now, and it's reshaping their internal social contracts. Some of them will begin distancing themselves from their leader quietly at first, subtly. The loyalty they bragged about will start eroding from the inside. They may still stand beside their leader physically, but psychologically they're stepping away, reevaluating, recalculating. They're beginning to ask themselves questions that would have been unthinkable before your move. Questions like, have we been following the wrong person? Was this hierarchy built on real strengths or just confidence? If someone like you can dismantle the illusion this easily, what does that say about the person we've been defending? These questions will never be spoken aloud, but they will be felt deeply, felt constantly, felt with enough force to destabilize their unity. That's what a checkmate does. It doesn't just end the current game, it makes everyone doubt the next one before it begins. Their leader, meanwhile, will attempt to stitch the narrative back together. They'll try to behave as though nothing has changed, as though your precision strike was a fluke, a slip, a minor anomaly. They'll force confidence into their voice. They'll manufacture dominance in their posture. They'll flash the same old expressions, hoping their crew will fall back in line. But the energy behind the performance will be wrong, too forced, too tight, too anxious. The performance breaks the moment the audience stops believing in the actor and their audience is no longer convinced. You'll notice the leader speaking faster than usual, as though rushing their own thoughts before their confidence dissolves. You'll notice them over-explaining things they used to throw around casually. You'll notice their eyes darting, their attention splintering, their certainty cracking at the edges. These aren't signs of recovery. These are signs of someone trying to climb out of a psychological hole you put them in with one moment of clarity. And the deeper truth is this: they can't climb out. Ego doesn't regenerate from honesty. Ego regenerates from denial. But your strike made denial impossible, at least for a while. Their crew senses this, and because they sense it, they begin adjusting their behavior in ways that work to your advantage without you needing to lift a finger. They become more cautious around you, more deliberate, more considerate, not out of kindness, but out of a primal instinct. An instinct activated by witnessing precision that can't be defended against. Humans can fight strength, humans can resist aggression, but precision disarms them. Precision gets into the bloodstream. Precision bypasses their defenses and speaks directly to their survival instinct. You aren't a threat because you cause damage. You're a threat because you cause clarity. And clarity is what collapses illusions built on ego. Over the next few encounters, you'll see the social terrain shifting further. Someone who once joked at your expense will now hold their tongue. Someone who once tried to one-up you will suddenly find themselves without words. Someone who used to speak over you will notice their voice cracking when they attempt the same. These aren't coincidences. These are neurological recalibrations. Their minds are teaching them to be careful around you because their minds now recognize you as someone capable of inflicting psychological consequences without warning. They don't fear your anger, they fear your mind. And that difference is what cements your new position in the hierarchy. You didn't climb, you didn't push anyone down. You simply revealed where everyone truly stood. You uncovered what was already true but hidden beneath ego, noise, and pretense. That's why the shift feels unnatural to them. It wasn't supposed to be this way in their narrative, but narratives don't survive contact with reality. And you delivered reality with such brutal precision that it forced everyone to rewrite their understanding of the social order. The checkmate wasn't the end. It was the introduction, which brings us directly to what comes next. Not the collapse, but the awakening. Not the aftermath, but the ripple. Not the silence of their crew, but the shift growing beneath that silence. Because the moment after a hierarchy breaks is the moment a new narrative begins forming in the shadows. And that narrative is already taking shape around you. They don't know what it means yet. They don't know where it leads. They don't know how to process the person you've revealed yourself to be. But they will, and the realization won't arrive gently. It will hit them slowly at first, like a pressure drop in the air, then violently, like a truth they can no longer deny. A truth that bends the framework they've been clinging to. Because once someone executes a clean, calculated, precision-based ego puncture, the kind that reshapes an entire room, you can never look at that person the same way again. You can never categorize them using old labels. You can never underestimate them safely. You can never rely on illusions when they've already demonstrated the ability to slice through illusion with one controlled movement. This is where the real transformation begins. Not in you, but in them. They will begin studying you without admitting they're studying you. They'll analyze your silence. They'll overinterpret your tone. They'll watch how you sit, how you breathe, how you respond, how you don't respond. They'll do it out of instinct, not desire. Because when ego is punctured, the unconscious mind seeks new reference points. It seeks stability. It seeks understanding. But they won't find stability in you. They'll find unpredictability precisely because they thought they had you figured out before, and they were wrong. Dead wrong. Wrong in a way that shattered their inner compass. You didn't just execute a checkmate. They realized you've been 10 moves ahead the entire time, and that's what terrifies them. The leader you dismantled mentally, strategically, effortlessly will attempt recovery. But recovery is impossible when the collapse wasn't accidental, their ego wasn't bruised, it was exposed. There's a difference. A bruise heals, an exposure lingers, it mutates, it metabolizes into paranoia. They will now walk into every room wondering if you're about to do it again. They will second guess every sentence they say around you. They will anticipate threats from angles that don't even exist. They'll try to convince themselves the moment wasn't as devastating as it felt. But the silence of their own crew betrays them. Their people saw what happened. Their people felt the shift. Their people registered the collapse. And now their people are watching you, not with fear, not with admiration, but with a cautious curiosity that borders on reverence. Because anyone who can silence a room without raising their voice possesses a kind of authority that cannot be taught or inherited. It can only be revealed. And you revealed it at the exact moment the leader's ego stretched too far into delusion. Let's talk about the internal conversations happening now, the ones they will never voice. Their crew is wondering if they aligned themselves with the wrong force all along. They're wondering if their loyalty was a mistake. They're wondering how many times your mind predicted outcomes they never saw coming. They're wondering how long you've been walking among them with the kind of cognitive sharpness that could shred their entire structure if you ever decided to. They're wondering why they didn't notice sooner. They'll feel foolish for that part. But the ego always feels foolish when reality arrives unannounced. Now something even more interesting begins. The hierarchy isn't just broken, it's dissolving. It's thinning at the edges, cracking inward, erasing itself in slow motion. But rather than falling apart with chaos, it's falling apart with silence. The kind of silence that comes after a truth too clean to argue with. The kind of silence that chokes every attempt to rebuild the illusion. The kind of silence that makes everyone hyper-aware of what isn't being said. Your presence is the silence now. Your strategy is the silence now. Your precision is the silence now. Each time you walk into the room, they will feel that silence before they see you. They'll sense the shift in air pressure the same way they sensed it seconds before the checkmate happened. Trauma imprints quickly. Their bodies will remember the moment even if their minds tried to bury it. And here's the beautiful part. Your dominance doesn't need repetition. People like them rely on repetition to maintain power. They need constant displays, constant noise, constant reminders of their authority. But you didn't rise through performance. You rose through accuracy. Accuracy doesn't require multiple demonstrations. One is enough. One clean puncture, one exposed insecurity. One demonstration of cognitive precision so sharp it rearranged their perception. This is why they're quiet now, not because you silenced them, but because their understanding of you silenced itself. Let's zoom deeper into their psychology. Their leader's ego was the central thread holding their group narrative together. Remove the thread and the narrative unravels. Even if the leader tries to reinforce it, patch it, glue it back together, the unraveling has already begun. They'll attempt to regain control, but their attempts will look forced, brittle, almost theatrical. They'll raise their voice slightly louder than necessary. They'll try to crack jokes that no longer land. They'll glare at crew members who hesitate too long. They'll overcorrect, overcompensate, overreact, because when someone knows the illusion is dying, they try to perform the illusion harder, but the crew won't buy it anymore, not after what they witnessed. The checkmate you delivered was the kind that leaves a psychological residue. It sticks, it haunts, it replays. Unlike arguments or insults or emotional outbursts, which can be rationalized away, precision cannot be denied. Precision is the enemy of ego because it operates on truth. And the ego fears truth more than it fears attack. Now comes the part you need to understand about your new position. You are not replacing the leader. You are not becoming the new authority. You are becoming something far more destabilizing, an independent variable in a system that depends on predictability. You don't belong to their hierarchy anymore. You exist parallel to it, above it, outside it. They cannot categorize you, they cannot anticipate you, they cannot dismiss you, and they cannot challenge you without risking another collapse. To challenge someone who uses noise is safe. To challenge someone who uses noise is safe. To challenge someone who uses precision is suicidal. They know that now, whether consciously or not, and you'll see the signs everywhere. People will approach you differently. Some will test boundaries cautiously, just to measure how far your clarity extends. Some will avoid testing you at all, treating you with the kind of respect usually given to a dangerous truth rather than a dangerous person. Some will attempt to get closer to you, hoping proximity will grant them access to the insight you displayed. They'll want to understand you, not because they're curious, but because they're trying to feel safe again. But safety isn't something you offer. Safety is something you dismantled. Safety is something you exposed as an illusion held together by ego-based confidence, and that's why they still can't breathe normally around you. Let's speak on the leader one more time. Their downfall is not complete. It's ongoing. They're not just fighting embarrassment. They're fighting identity collapse. Their entire persona depended on the illusion of intellectual dominance. Then you arrived with a single stroke that dissolved it. A persona that relies on untested superiority cannot handle being tested. It cracks instantly. And once cracked, it leaks insecurity everywhere. You'll notice them glancing at you more often, waiting for another strike. Every time you adjust your expression, they'll interpret it as a message. Every silence will feel like judgment. Every calm movement will feel like strategy. You have become the mirror they can't escape. The mirror that shows them what they pretend not to see. And here's where the next phase emerges. The crew will begin redirecting their attention away from the leader and toward the silence around you. Not because you're louder, not because you're imposing, but because you represent competence without theatrics. And competence without theatrics is magnetic. It pulls eyes, it pulls awareness, it pulls loyalty in subtle, unconscious ways. You didn't ask for loyalty, you earned gravity, and gravity pulls whether it wants to or not. Over time, the crew will begin making micro adjustments in their social alignment. They'll speak to you more carefully. They'll defer to your interpretations. They'll wait to see your reactions before forming their own. They won't say they trust you. They won't admit they fear you. They won't acknowledge the hierarchy shift occurring beneath their feet. But they will behave in ways that confirm it. Power isn't declared. Power is revealed. And your reveal already happened. Your checkmate wasn't an ending. It was induction. Induction into a new psychological category in their minds. The category reserved for people who see what others miss, who strike without warning, who dismantle egos without touching them. This is what destabilizes them the most. They can prepare for aggression, but they cannot prepare for accuracy. So the question becomes, what happens now? What happens after the silence? What happens after the recalibration? What happens when a group tries to function under the pressure of an unspoken hierarchy shift? The answer is simple. They fracture. Not explosively, not dramatically, not publicly. They fracture quietly from the inside in three distinct ways. First, those who fear clarity will drift away from their leader because they hunger for stability, but they will not come to you. They will simply detach. They no longer trust someone whose ego can be punctured that easily. Second, those who recognize clarity will begin mirroring your behavior subconsciously. They'll adopt your calm. They'll imitate your silence. They'll pick up cues from the way you observe instead of react. They will follow the person whose mind proved itself. Third, those who depended on the illusion will cling desperately to the leader because without the illusion they have no identity. They'll become louder, more defensive, more reactive as a way to hide the fact that the person they relied on is crumbling. Your precision created these fractures. Your checkmate accelerated these fractures. Your presence deepens these fractures every time you walk into the room. And here is the final truth, the part they will never admit but will always feel. You cannot unsee someone's collapse once you've seen it. A leader whose ego was punctured with precision will never look powerful again. And the mind that executed that puncture becomes unforgettable. Your move didn't just alter the moment, it altered the mythology of the room. You became the one variable everyone must calculate around. You became the one mind they cannot afford to underestimate. You became the checkmate they never saw coming, but will always remember. And as the fracture spreads, as the narrative rewrites itself, as the silence grows heavier, one truth rises above everything. You didn't just win, you redefined the entire game. And now the question that haunts them is the same one that will carry us into the final understanding. If you could puncture an ego with that much precision, wonder what would happen if you ever decided to do it again, because they know the answer. They just don't want to say it.
Listen closely, because what I'm about to say matters. If you're here right now, it's not an accident. Your story has reached a point where pressure is rising, and the world seems to be turning against you. The same media voices that once praised you are suddenly twisting the narrative, hiding your truth, and protecting the sponsors who fear your potential. They act like they're exposing you, but really, they're exposing their own weakness, their own fear of what you're becoming. They want to break your confidence because your progress threatens their comfort. But this is exactly where your power awakens. Not when everything is easy, but when the world tries to corner you. This is your moment to rise, sharpen your focus, and push forward with more force than ever, not to destroy anyone, but to outwork, outgrow, and outrun every obstacle they throw at you. Before we go deeper into this message, pause for a second, hit that like button, subscribe so we can reach 5,000 subscribers, and drop the number 11 in the comments to show you're locked in and ready. If you're someone who quits when things get heavy, you'll stop here. But if you're someone who refuses to be silenced, you'll keep listening, because deep down, you know this message is yours. There comes a moment when the same cameras that once celebrated you suddenly point at you with a different intention. Their lenses no longer capture your achievements. They search for flaws, cracks, weaknesses. And when that shift happens, It hits like a cold wind. You feel the sting not because you fear them, but because you understand how quickly loyalty fades in a world driven by convenience and profit. But even as the spotlight grows harsh, you remind yourself that light cannot hurt what stands rooted in truth. The cameras may twist their angles, zoom in on the wrong details, or frame you in a shadow you never created. Yet deep inside, you learn a powerful lesson. People don't turn on you because they discovered something new about you. They turn because they realized something new about themselves. Fear, insecurity, or dependency on the powerful hands feeding them. And suddenly, you stop expecting fairness from a stage built on manipulation. When the cameras turn against you, you don't shrink. You lift your chin a little higher. You breathe a little deeper. Instead of fighting for the right image, you focus on the right purpose. Because in that transformation, you recognize that your journey was never meant to be validated by screens. It was meant to be defined by your strength. It's almost eerie how quickly narratives shift in the newsroom. One evening, your story is praised, and by the next morning, every headline sings a different tune. It's as if someone flipped a switch behind the scenes. And suddenly, your name becomes a target instead of a testimony. That kind of sudden change doesn't happen naturally. It happens when your truth threatens the wrong comfort zones. Inside those newsrooms, whispers replace facts. Editors rewrite reality to keep powerful sponsors smiling, and anchors rehearse lines that were never theirs to speak from the heart. Those who once shook your hand with admiration now avoid eye contact, not because of guilt, but because they know they traded integrity for income. But you don't collapse from their betrayal. Instead, you begin to understand the hidden machinery behind every polished news segment. And that understanding liberates you, because once you see how easily people can be bought, you stop letting their opinions sell your peace. Powerful sponsors fear one thing more than competition: truth. When your truth challenges their comfort, their influence, or their profits, they react with the desperation of a kingdom under attack. They don't fight openly. They fight through puppets, through headlines, through selective silence. Because if your truth reaches the public unfiltered, half of their empire could crack. These sponsors don't just fund advertisements. They fund perceptions. They shape public opinion like clay, molding it into whatever protects their throne. And when your voice disrupts that clay, they panic. They don't fear you as a person. They fear what you represent, a mirror they cannot control. Yet there's beauty in this chaos. It shows you the magnitude of your impact. When billion-dollar entities tremble at your words, it means your truth isn't just loud, it's dangerous. And dangerous truth is the kind that changes worlds. The media doesn't try to destroy your name because you're wrong. They try because you're inconvenient. Your existence disrupts their script. Your courage exposes their dependence, and your reality challenges the fiction they've carefully crafted for years. You become the unpredictable character they cannot manipulate. For them, discrediting you is easier than explaining you. They twist your story because the real one threatens the foundation they stand on. You are the fire they cannot extinguish and the storm they cannot contain. And nothing terrifies them more than a voice that stays steady under pressure. But in their attempt to bury you, they forget a fundamental truth. People eventually recognize authenticity. Lies may travel fast, but truth has a way of arriving exactly when it's needed the most. Powerful, undeniable, and unstoppable. Every attack, every headline, every distorted panel discussion, it's noise. And that noise is designed with one purpose: to break your focus. They want to distract you from your mission, drain your energy, and shake your confidence. Because as long as you stay focused, you're a threat they can't control. The noise feels overwhelming at first. It echoes in your mind, follows you on social media, and tries to slip into your heart. But then you make a decision, a powerful one. You choose to listen, not to the noise, but to your purpose. You choose clarity over chaos, growth over gossip. Slowly, their noise becomes irrelevant. Like traffic sounds in the background, it continues, but it no longer enters your inner world. And in that moment, you reclaim something priceless, your direction. It takes extraordinary emotional strength to remain steady when headlines attack you, when the world thinks it knows your story, but has only heard their version, when strangers judge you based on a script someone else wrote. That's when your inner resilience is tested the most. You learn that steadiness is not silence. It's discipline. It's choosing not to react out of anger, but to respond with wisdom. It's understanding that storms are temporary, but your character is permanent. Every time you stay calm, you defeat the chaos trying to consume you. Those who watch you will wonder how you're still standing. They don't realize that the same pressure meant to break you is the pressure shaping you into a stronger version of yourself. And that transformation is something no headline can rewrite. Calmness in a battlefield confuses the enemy. When you don't panic, when you don't lash out, when you don't crumble, they begin to worry. Because your calm means they no longer control the narrative. You do. Your calm tells them you're not afraid. It tells them you understand the game they're playing. And it tells them their attacks fail to shake your core. Media thrives on your reaction. When you don't give them one, they lose their power. And somewhere in that calmness, you find yourself growing. You discover a deeper strength, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't break, doesn't run, the kind that simply stands tall and unbothered. Responding without reacting is a rare form of emotional intelligence. It's the art of choosing purpose over impulse. Instead of wasting time defending yourself against lies, you pour that energy into building truth. Instead of arguing with noise, you speak only where it matters. This strength doesn't appear overnight. It's shaped through struggle, through nights spent reflecting instead of retaliating, through moments where your heart wanted to shout, but your mind whispered, stay focused. And every time you choose restraint, you choose growth. Eventually, people start to notice, not your silence, but your strength. They see how you carry yourself with dignity while others drown in their own bitterness. And that contrast speaks louder than any interview or debate ever could. Rising above lies requires courage, but rising above manufactured narratives requires something deeper, self-respect. You realize that your value is not determined by their scripts. Their distortion does not define your identity. And their false stories lose power the moment you refuse to let them enter your heart. When you rise above, you choose to walk a different path. You focus on what you're building, not what they're breaking. You invest energy into your mission, not their drama. And in doing so, you outgrow the smallness of their world. Eventually, people begin to see the cracks in the stories told about you. They compare headlines to your actions and realize the truth was never on the screen. It was in your character. Progress is the one thing they fear the most, because they can't control it. They can control headlines, they can control narratives, but they cannot control your growth. Every step forward you take, without their permission, threatens the grip they have on the audience. Your progress becomes a silent rebellion, a quiet message to the world that you are not defined by their opinions, but by your vision. Every accomplishment of yours embarrasses their attempts to undermine you. It proves that their attacks were nothing but desperate noise. And the more you rise, the more powerless they feel. Because nothing terrifies those who crave control more than someone who refuses to bow. Pressure can crush you, or it can create you. And in your case, it becomes the force that molds you into someone unshakable. Every lie, every attack, every attempt to silence you becomes fuel for your transformation. You don't escape pressure. You convert it into power. This is what separates leaders from followers. Leaders use hardship as a stepping stone. They take the weight thrown at them and build strength from it. And as you evolve through the fire, you realize that you're not just surviving the pressure, you are mastering it. In that mastery, you uncover a truth. People who face the harshest storms often grow into the strongest warriors. Remaining unshaken is not easy, especially when you're surrounded by chaos. But victory comes to those who remain rooted in their integrity. When the world tries to push you down and you stand firm, that alone is a win. Your stillness becomes your shield. Your consistency becomes your weapon. While others react emotionally, you stay grounded in purpose, and that composure frustrates those who want to see you fall, because it proves that their influence over you is gone. In the end, the real victory is not proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. It's realizing that you were always stronger than the storm. There comes a point when you stop trying to change the system and start building beyond it. You realize that true freedom comes from creating your own path, one that cannot be manipulated, bought, or censored. Building beyond their influence means trusting your own vision more than their validation. It means choosing independence over acceptance, and it means walking away from rooms where your truth is considered inconvenient. As you build your own path, people begin to follow, not because they were told to, but because they resonate with your authenticity. And authenticity is something no media empire can replicate. Growth is the quiet revenge that needs no announcement. You don't fight the system. You outgrow it. You don't break the barriers. You rise above them. The moment you stop depending on the structures designed to control you, you become untouchable. Outgrowing the system means you no longer need their approval. You no longer fear their narratives. You no longer shrink when they strike. You evolve into a version of yourself that cannot be silenced because your voice comes from purpose, not permission. And when they look at what you've become, they realize something painful. Their attempts to weaken you only made you unstoppable. In the end, you emerge not as a victim of a media storm, but as someone who walked through it and came out stronger. You learn that storms don't last, but those who endure them do. The media tried to rewrite your story, but they forgot that your truth was not theirs to control. Your strength becomes your legacy. Your silence becomes your strategy. Your resilience becomes your victory. They attacked you because they feared you, but in trying to destroy you, they only revealed your power. And now, as you stand stronger than ever, the world sees the real story. Your truth didn't become a threat because it was loud. It became a threat because it was real. Real truth doesn't need a microphone. It shakes systems just by existing. When you stood up and spoke with honesty, you unintentionally exposed the cracks in their foundation. Powerful people fear those who don't bow, and your courage reminded them that their control is fragile. Truth has always been the enemy of those who build their empires on manipulation. They hoped you'd stay quiet, stay small, stay obedient. But the moment your truth surfaced, it began to ripple across their safe zones, forcing them to confront realities they've been avoiding for years. They attack you not because you're wrong, but because they can no longer hide behind deception. And now, your truth stands tall, unshakable, undeniable, unstoppable. It's not just your shield, it's your weapon, a weapon that cannot silence, rewrite, or destroy. You are the storm they hoped would never come. There's a shift in the atmosphere the moment powerful people realize you cannot be controlled. Their smiles fade, their tone changes, their strategies shift from persuasion to intimidation. Because people in power rely on obedience, and you shattered that expectation the moment you decided to think for yourself. Control works only on those who fear losing something. But when you stop fearing loss, you become dangerous. Your independence dismantles their influence. Your confidence breaks their chains. And your refusal to kneel forces them to confront the truth. You are not theirs to command. That moment of realization terrifies them because they finally see who you truly are. Not a pawn, not a follower, but a force built from integrity, courage, and grit. Someone who will never be guided by fear. They tried to crush your voice because they could not compete with it. They tried to drown your words in noise because they couldn't match your clarity. But you stood tall in the middle of their chaos, refusing to shrink. That kind of courage is rare, and it exposes their weakness. Every attack they threw at you was designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you question your worth, to make you feel alone. But instead, each blow only strengthened your resolve. You realized that if your voice wasn't powerful, they wouldn't try so hard to silence it. Standing tall wasn't easy, but it became your turning point. Because when the world saw you unbroken, unbothered, and unshakable, they realized something powerful. You are more than a voice. You are a presence. You weren't supposed to fight back. That's what they thought. They mistook your kindness for weakness, and your silence for surrender. But inside you was a fighter they never anticipated. A warrior shaped by struggle, sharpened by betrayal, and fueled by purpose. Your rise didn't come from applause or encouragement. It came from the fire you walked through, from the nights you fought battles alone, from the moments where breaking was easier than standing. But you chose strength over surrender, and that choice changed everything. Now, your rise is unstoppable. You are no longer reacting. You are leading, no longer surviving. You are conquering. And the same people who underestimated you now watch in shock as you climb higher than they ever imagined. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any press conference, interview, or argument. Your silence was not weakness. It was strategy. You refused to play their game, and that decision pierced them deeper than any counterattack ever could. People fear silence because it cannot be controlled. It makes them uneasy. It forces them to question themselves. And when you went silent, they panicked. They didn't know what you were planning, thinking, or preparing. And unpredictability terrifies those who rely on manipulation. Your silence revealed your power. It showed that you don't need to defend your truth. You don't need to fight for validation. You don't need to respond to noise. You rise by staying focused. And nothing unsettles your enemies more. They tried to paint you as weak because they were afraid the world would see your real strength. They tried to distort your image because your authenticity threatened their scripted version of reality. But strength has a way of shining through every lie. Your strength was never loud. It was steady, humble, patient. It came from every challenge you overcame, every heartbreak you survived, and every moment you chose to keep going when quitting felt easier. That kind of strength cannot be erased. It can only be exposed. And now the world sees you as you truly are. Resilient, principled, and powerful beyond measure. The truth they tried to hide has become the story everyone talks about. Growth is silent, but its impact is loud. As you evolved, as you healed, as you improved, their insecurities started to surface. Your growth forced them to face their stagnation. Your progress highlighted everything they lacked: courage, discipline, integrity. People who fear growth will always try to belittle it. They'll mock what they can't understand and attack what they cannot achieve. But instead of shrinking, you expanded, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And the wider you grew, the smaller their influence became. Now your growth is undeniable. It speaks for itself. It proves that despite their efforts, you outgrew every limitation they placed on you. They thought their attacks would break you, but you turned every hit into ammunition. Every insult sharpened your focus. Every lie fueled your determination. Every setback taught you resilience. You didn't just survive. You weaponized the very things meant to destroy you. That's the power of a strong mind. It can transform pain into purpose. Instead of letting their negativity consume you, you channeled it into growth, into ambition, into unstoppable drive. And in doing so, you turned the battlefield into your training ground. Now, the attacks no longer touch you. They bounce off the armor you forged through experience, and your enemies are left confused because nothing they throw at you works anymore. You didn't intend to become a storm. You became one because they forced you to. They pushed you, cornered you, underestimated you, until you transformed into something powerful enough to sweep through every barrier they built. Storms don't ask for permission. They don't negotiate. They don't seek approval. They arrive, they shake the ground, and they change everything in their path. And that's exactly what your presence has become. A force too strong to ignore and too fierce to control. Those who once tried to break you now fear the energy you carry. Because storms don't respond to whispers, they rewrite landscapes. Every lie they told about you was supposed to bury you. Instead, it elevated you. Lies forced you to grow thicker skin. Lies pushed you to build your own foundation. Lies taught you that your worth comes from within, not from public opinions. You learned to walk with your head high, even when your name was dragged through the mud. You learned that character is built in the dark, far away from applause. And in that darkness, you discovered strength they never expected you to have. Now, every lie becomes another step upward, another reason to rise, another reminder of your purpose. Their attempts to break you have become the very reason you stand taller today. Empires built on deception may look powerful, but their foundations are fragile. They rely on fear, manipulation, and illusion. And illusions eventually fade. But you're built on truth, on grit, on endurance. You don't need fancy words or powerful backers to survive. Your strength comes from authenticity, and authenticity outlasts everything. While their empires crack under pressure, you remain steady. While their stories crumble, yours grows stronger. In the end, it's not the loudest empire that survives. It's the one built on realness. And that's why your journey continues long after theirs ends. Walking alone is not a punishment. It's preparation. When the world turned its back on you, you didn't crumble. You walked alone, but you walked with purpose. And that purpose became your compass. People fear walking alone because they fear their own thoughts. But you embraced solitude. You used it to think, plan, rebuild, and evolve. You learned to trust yourself more than the crowd, more than the noise, more than the world. Now your independence is your power. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You don't need support to stand tall. You become self-made, self-driven, and self-defined. Fear is revealing. When people fear you, it means you carry something powerful, potential, influence, destiny. Their fear wasn't about you personally. It was about the change you represent. And deep down, they sensed that your destiny is larger than any narrative they tried to trap you in. Every time they reacted aggressively, it was because your rise reminded them of their fall. Every attempt to suppress you was a sign that your path scared them. That's the irony. Their fear was the first confirmation that you were meant for something bigger. And now you see it clearly. Their fear wasn't a warning, it was a prophecy. Your voice grew stronger, not because it was loud, but because it was honest. People can silence noise, but they cannot silence authenticity. They tried to twist your words, mute your message, and bury your truth. But you kept speaking from a place of conviction. A voice rooted in truth becomes unkillable. It spreads without permission. It inspires without force. It creates change without shouting. Your voice became something they could no longer script or control. Now they listen, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Your voice has outgrown their platforms. You didn't just grow. You transformed. You rose into a version of yourself they never prepared for. Stronger, wiser, fiercer, untouchable. You became someone who doesn't break under pressure, but becomes sharper because of it. They expected you to collapse. Instead, you evolved. They expected you to surrender. Instead, you awakened. They expected you to stay the same. Instead, you became unstoppable. And now, as you stand in your full power, the world finally sees the truth.